Hello and welcome to another episode of Intune.training, the place to learn how to use Microsoft Intune, the Steve and Adam show with Adam and Jake, and special guest, Danny Guillory. So Steve and Ben taking the night off, doing the Aussie thing, I guess. I don't know, whatever they're doing. But anyway, we've got a special guest tonight, Danny Guillory from Microsoft. And so that I don't ever butcher this, I've just started handing it off to the guests. So, hey, Danny, tell us who you are and what you do at Microsoft.
Yeah, so thanks for having me on the show. I'm a senior program manager on the ConfigMgr team, and I'm responsible for Cloud Attach.
Okay.
That's
Awesome.
what I do at Microsoft, at least. When I'm home, I annoy my wife, my kids. I'm based out of St. Louis, but I'm from Louisiana. So if you can't tell by the accent, everything South I-10 from Houston to New Orleans is kind of my stomping ground. So,
Well, that's awesome because we're kindred spirits. I am also from South Louisiana, so it's wonderful to find a fellow Southerner to hang out with instead of those crazy Aussies. Anyway, so
I'm stuck up here in the Midwest, so maybe one day I'll get down there.
yeah. So before we started recording, Danny, you were kind of giving us some of your background, man. It sounded like you had quite the history. So you did track in high school in Louisiana, and then you went on to bigger and better things with the military.
yeah, so I was an ADHD kid. If you ask my wife, she'll tell you I still got it. But so yeah, mom and dad was like, "Hey, go run out that energy." So track, basketball, football, all sports was what I did. Gave up baseball for track and field and basketball, and that's basically how I made my way through college. So from college to the military, joined as infantry, wound up flying F-22s for a year. Got
He just glosses right over that one. Literally flying F-22s for really. Where
Yeah,
did you see combat during that, or just
no. So I was on a joint training program, Army and Air Force joint training. They do it quite often, but yeah, I did that for like a year and a half. Trained, flew. I used to fly from San Diego to Whidbey. Used to be an Air Force base out there, but there's a military air base out there. I think it's a Marine air base. Yeah, that's one of my babies. So
just
yeah,
gonna Photoshop your head in there? That's all.
now I fly Cessna, so very different aerodynamics, but feels like I'm going from NASCAR or F1 to bike. So yeah, what can I say? My son will fly with me, so
Oh, that's
it's nice.
awesome.
Not bad. Yeah, so we get out. That's how we social distance now. We get out, go fly around St. Louis or something, and it's something for him to aspire to do. So he thinks it's cool. And it's like, great, look, I can spend money for you doing that all day long. So it helps. It helps. It works, and it motivates him to do something.
That's pretty awesome.
That's great.
That's nice. And now you have this boring job at Microsoft, huh?
A lot safer job. A year and a half flying F-22s, and then military stuck me back in a Bradley in the mechanized unit and said, "Hey, go lead this platoon in Iraq." So, I mean, combat's combat. If you've seen the movie, it's combat. So I just chose to get out when I came home. It's like, I can actually use this computer degree I got instead of so it was a thing. I did 10 right at the halfway point, and I just decided to come home. I'd done enough, seen enough, and nobody could guarantee I'd be a flyboy for the next 10 years. So it's like, okay, I guess I'll go to this civilian computer thing for a little while.
Wow, 20 years later, here we are. Huh?
Yeah.
Quite the journey.
Awesome. Well, as awesome as I mean, shoot, I'd love to hang out and hear more, but I think our audience probably wants to hear some stuff about, cloud attaching and all these things, and so
Cloud management gateways, all that fun stuff.
And so we're going to drop some links into the description thing with Jake. Yeah, thanks, Jake, for doing the pointy thing because that's a requirement on YouTube. So Danny, you've also you partner with another Microsoftie doing a channel on YouTube called Microsoft Endpoint Manager. I mean, that's what you got it titled as. Was that is that your actual title of the channel? But you guys are working on a new series, right? Called Unpacking Endpoint Management. And so I think a little bit of what we're going to talk about tonight will be similar to what you're covering in that. So why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So, before I came to Featured PM, I spent 3 years in CAT, Customer Acceleration Team is what that stands for. And we talk to customers quite often. Like, that's one of the joys I like for working with Microsoft. Like, honestly, why I like getting up in the morning is to talk to customers and help them solve the problems that I've been through using the product since '99. So I've seen it evolve, and it's helped me. So the things I just like to give back, and hopefully I'm giving some nuggets to some people as in helping them simplify their journey throughout. But it's really just a brain dump. Some of the things that we hear from customers. Sometimes there's hot items for the week. There's hot items for the month. And helping customers understand what signals to put together, right? Because I think one thing we do really good at Microsoft is giving options. Sometimes how customers connect the dots is not necessarily the happy path, or as customers will say, hey, that's not how we use the real world. So because I was 15 years as a customer before I came to Microsoft, I still have that customer side, and I still look at the product with that customer eye, like, hey, is this a good admin experience? Is this a good end user experience? So we started that show really just to basically give that information out. It's nothing that nobody told us to do, but again, I'm passionate about helping customers understand if I can make somebody's journey simpler, easier, faster than what I had, then I just feel like I did my job. So I don't think I'm the golden child. I don't think I'm the golden goose, but I'm full of knowledge that if I can help somebody, be a little bit more efficient, then hey, take the information and use it.
Awesome. Well, I mean, I think we're on similar paths, so it's awesome to meet up with folks trying to do the same kind of thing. So that's great. Also, if you go subscribe to his channel, which I highly recommend, the link will be below. Don't be alarmed. Some of the older videos don't have any audio, so. It was by design.
Much like our old videos.
Yeah. Except we've tried to have audio.
No audio was by design. I recorded a bunch with my voice, and I just hated my voice. It's like, all right, they're gonna just have to follow the cursor. And then we decided to do the show, and me and Steve have a great time doing that show. That's probably one of the better parts of our month or our week as we do it. It's just a time for us to relax, unwind, and share. It's almost like a hallway conversation where the audience is just privy to, that we're just having a candid conversation.
Excellent. And then you've also got some great blog content out on Tech Community that will also link below, so you can dig through that. And so there'll be some more info around some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about tonight. So you've got is it a series or just two? I couldn't tell if it was just 2 parts or if it was going to be more coming. You've got Cloud Attached Your Future Part 1 and Part 2 out there, but is there more coming?
There is more coming. I started with Part 1. Again, back to how the show got started. Customers would say, hey, I can't do dynamic grouping in the cloud. I'm like, okay, well, here's how you do it. It's half ConfigMgr. You sync some collections and the data that's in the collections up to your AzureAD group, and now you can get some dynamic targeting. So, Part 1 started with that. And then Part 2 turned into the big 3, because I realized customers were doing big 3, what I would say, backwards. And then, I still plan on writing the analytics one. Actually, I wrote that and rewrote it probably 3 times now. And then the group policy one. And I think I got one more after that. But it's actually going to be 5 once I'm all finished with it.
Excellent. So definitely go get on Tech Community, and we'll put a link to the starting point down there. So stay tuned, and then we'll also have his Twitter handle. So as you can tell, he's got his fingers in lots of pots, and so we're gonna tap into this and kind of dig into Danny's knowledge tonight, and hopefully kind of cover some new ground that we've kind of avoided mostly on this channel. So to kind of give if you're new here, if it's your first time, sorry. But so we've focused on Intune historically with this channel. That was the whole point of the beginning of this channel, was getting from starting from an on-prem perspective, but what is Intune and how do we get there? But we've heard lots and lots of feedback on the channel over the years of just, hey, it'd be great to get the hybrid kind of, the cloud attached story. And how do we, okay, I'm on-prem today. How do I get from on-prem to Intune, and how do I connect those dots? And a couple weeks ago, Johannes and I did a video where we were talking about, we kind of started down that path of setting up AzureAD Connect so you can synchronize your identities so that you can access on-prem resources. But in that video, we talked extensively about the idea that we should be moving to AzureAD only devices, and how we've kind of, I think that like you kind of said, Danny, people are kind of getting this picture backwards a little bit on, like, okay, so hybrid, the hybrid word jumps around depending on what stack you're talking about. It's used differently. And so if I say, well, I'm hybrid, well, hybrid is, we've got AD on-prem, but and then we're joined to Azure, so that's hybrid. But then we've got our device, and our device is an AD device, but it's got an identity in Azure, and so, well, then it's hybrid, and then so we kind of going down this route of, okay, well, so that means that when I build new devices and provision them with autopilot or something, well, they also need to be hybrid, because, well, all my other devices are hybrid. So that's kind of it makes sense, sort of, because you're just like, oh yeah, I'll just follow the hybrid path. And this Azure AD only thing is like, well, no, I can't do that because I've got on-prem resources. I've got things that I need to get to that are hybrid. So I've got to have this hybrid model for my environment. And I think that's a story that we hear over and over again. And so it'd be great to kind of like jumping in at the big three, kind of talking through what you've seen and the story that you're telling your customers on, okay, here's a better path. And like you said, it's not like it's hybrid is wrong. It's that you could actually do this other route and achieve the same results, but even more modern, more cloud centric, without all the overhead of the on-prem and building in the dependencies to the on-prem resources. So, right. I mean, hopefully that was a decent lead in.
yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head, right? With the Azure AD Connect, obviously the first piece, right? So I just think, like, when I was IT director and system admin, my system was on-prem. So what do? And that's where customers should start. We do have customers that will call us and say, hey, I want to cut the cord and go from one to the other. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But just sticking with, I have this. How do I get to this? And one of the things that I'll say, one of my mentors told me, and you've heard it before, I'm sure, transformation, right? If you want to go through a migration, then go install 2007 and then migrate to 2012 or something like that. And those were painful days. I help customers understand that the cloud attached piece, as much as you, perfect words I can share with audiences, which I shared with my manager one time when we was driving back from EDC. Cloud attached to simplify your ConfigMgr. And if you can wrap your mind around that, then other dominoes will start to fit within that puzzle. And when I say that is, if I was to go back and be a customer again today, I draw a box literally around SCCM and say, I do not want to take SCCM out this box. If I think outside the box, that means I need to think about cloud, right? So when I think about cloud, I think about CMG, tenant attach, co-management, but also what's like the most common thing I see customers do is stand up. I need another distribution point because I'm in another location. Wait, stop. Why are you doing that? All the different caching technologies, right? Again, that's the box, that imaginary box I'm talking about. Ask yourself, why am I putting that distribution point there? Because we all know putting a distribution point there is, putting a server there is one thing, but then all the things that come with it, monitoring, maintenance, redundancy, SLA. See, I've done this for too long, but yeah, it winds up being things that they don't necessarily need to do. So when I talk about the box that I draw, that's like putting context around it. Draw the box, and hey, I need a distribution point. Wait, why do you need that distribution point? Can we do pure cache? Can we do MCC? Can we do anything else besides put a physical box there that's just gonna have to wind up being replaced and cause us other types of headaches? So then that leads me into like a lot of other conversations. And I remember, and y'all probably remember this too. Before COVID, we had lots of conversations about cloud management gateway and co-manage. Tenant attachment was the thing then, but we had a lot of conversations around it. And I remember like screaming to my lungs with people saying, "Deploy ACMG, please stop doing this old internet-based client management or trying to put things into DMZs and things like." Again, don't add resources that you're just going to have to add other maintenance on automation and workloads too. That just not good. I think like that IT director customer hat on when I think about stuff like that. So what I found is that once COVID happened, now everybody wanted to do co-management. And then they wanted to install enable tenant attach, which were two great things. And hands down, those are the right things to do. But what customers were really wanting was to get those client messages, right, that were from those devices that were outside the four walls at somebody's house, at somebody's campsite. They wanted to get those client messages back into the site server because those client messages fed the system, right? Collections, hardware inventory, software inventory, app. And guess what? When they turned on co-management and tenant attach, they didn't get that because they were like, why? And I remember several customers calling me, "Hey, my collection devices are dropping out of my collections. My reports aren't working." And I'm like, "Do you have a CMG?" No. So, but that requires more than a username and password. Yes, it requires more than these. So, it was definitely an enlightening moment. So, that's what basically made me come out with the big three, right? And the big three is descriptive, not prescriptive. I mean, you could actually do them in any order. The order that I put down in the big three is just kind of what I've seen customers do. And then that would be the foundation to grow on, right? So you got the big three, which means you put out the fires. And the really good thing about the big three, and I'll pull up some slides here in a second, but the big thing I like about the big three is the way that I think about the big three, again, is still in that customer mindset. And I'm basically avoiding all risk, right? So I need my cloud management gateway so that I can reach my devices beyond the four walls. And implementing that requires some certificates because we need authentication. Hopefully, if you've seen the video, I use one certificate. I just got a certificate from DigiCert, and boom, my devices started communicating because I added the CMG. Those devices talked into the environment, got the CMG policy, and I'm good to go. So I can still maintain those devices, and I didn't add any extra workload. So, I mean, nothing changed, right? I still would deploy apps the same, patches the same. Nothing changed. I just added think of a cloud role. Right, I just added a cloud role into my configuration.
Yeah, you've just extended your management point to the cloud, so your devices can have something to talk to when they're not on the business network.
Yep. It helps to make sense. And then what I found after we were doing the CMG was that the next day customer called back the next week and was like, "Hey, I need to be able to do CM pivot. I need to be able to do some of these things." I'm like, "Well, just tenant attach. Like it's already there. Turn it on." And the questions they would ask, like, "Was that gonna break?" Because that customer mindset, right? It's like, once I do this, what's gonna break me? Y'all always say nothing, but something's gonna happen. Like nothing's gonna happen, man. Your devices just will now have extra capabilities, extra functionality. And then the last thing is code management. Code management is really, really good. And I will tell customers they should do step one, which is CMG, should do step two, which is your tenant attach. And then that's a double negative. So don't not do code management, but I say take a minute and pause because the code management is a signal that you are ready to move workloads, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying don't do it. You should definitely do it. Again, so remember my previous statement, right? Use the cloud to simplify your configuration manager. That step three is that exact thing, right? So I'm going to use the cloud to simplify the headaches that most customers will tell me about their configuration manager. Oh, I don't want to keep up with my WSUS, right? Great. You don't have to, but you're going to have to figure out where you want to move things to the cloud. When you do, methodically, obviously, and I'm not saying go, select all your collections. No, I'll do that.
Take it in steps.
Yeah, take it in steps, take it in bites. And I apply a lot of common sense to the things I do. Not saying other people don't, but a lot of people feel pressure from different angles, whether it be management, timelines, things. Make sure you're going through the right steps. And when you go through the right steps, things are smooth. And that's what that cloud attached piece is. It should be smooth. The big three should be smooth. And then once you get at least to step two, you can start thinking about other things. You could go straight to start thinking about co-management. You could actually go in to start thinking about other signals that would help you be more secure and efficient in your environment. So what I'm talking about there, right? Now we're talking about, I would call this like cloud attached plus, right? Say, hey, take my group policies, right? You've now got your CMG. You've now got tenant attached. I asked, why are you using group policy nowadays, right? You should be taking those group policies, turning them into configuration items, putting remediation on it. So now you build a self-healing type solution. And now you can take cloud policy on that same journey, right, into the cloud. That doesn't mean stop at ConfigMgr. That just means that as they transition, I just taken all that management traffic off the VPN. So now it's through ConfigMgr, it's self-remediated, whether it's on-prem or off-prem. I'm not having to rely on the VPN. I can take those things and do them through configuration items. And then when I'm ready, I can use group policy analytics as another signal to then move those policies straight to cloud policies. So that's the journey I would go on. That's the journey I try to bring customers on when I was in Canada.
I love that. In fact, we had someone tweeted yesterday and asked the question, hey, so we've got a customer who's ready to move fully to Intune, and how would you recommend doing that? And so well, okay, if you're doing co-management, have you slid the sliders yet? And they said, well, no. So okay, so that's your first step, because like you just described, you take them one at a time, and this is very near and dear because I'm actively in the middle of doing this at my company, where I am. We've been doing group policies for 20 more than 20 years, I think, and trying to rationalize and migrate as much as possible, or really actually try to remove as much as possible, but then rationalize and migrate to Intune. But then there's some gaps there of like, okay, well, Intune can't do these things. And just like you said, so if we have a vision of, okay, Intune. Okay, so I said something about near and dear.
Yeah, we talk about near and dear. You were doing it. It at the office, going through some group policy rationalization, things like that.
Okay, so all right, so hey, we're jumping back in. We had some technical difficulties. Adam's internet sucks. So somewhere we were in this story of, hey, we're doing this rationalization and moving group policies and moving things to the cloud. But the point I was attempting to make was, I like the idea of doing the CIs for, like, we have some reliance on group policy preferences, and I've recently been working on a script to do proactive remediation using, like, converting group policy preferences to JSON, and then taking that JSON and ingesting it on the client to create registry keys or copy files or whatever. And because it gets me further down the path of non-dependence on ConfigMgr, right? Like, it's still not elegant because now I've got this custom script that I have to rely on to do these things. I would love to not have a reliance on these registry keys. And so if I've got to look at it and say, okay, what's the better route? Like, I can do, I can build some of this as CIs and probably manage that for the short term. But do I think this functionality may exist in Intune in a year by the time we don't need ConfigMgr anymore? Maybe. Do I think that that we may not need the functionality in a year? We may not care to set these registry keys, because right now we're just trying to retain feature parity. But in the future, we may say, well, we don't need that anymore because that was a legacy, blah, blah, blah. And so that's the type of rationalization I'm personally doing with our environment, trying to identify the like you said, if you put ConfigMgr, I really like that analogy. If you put ConfigMgr in a box and say, okay, like it's this idea of, imagine that ConfigMgr is not there. How would I achieve this in Intune? Okay, so let me put all of my energy into achieving as much as possible with Intune, and then falling back to ConfigMgr for the pieces that I can't do today in Intune. But even still, like, I don't have to bite all of that off in one chunk, that's what the co-management piece is all about, is allowing me to take one piece at a time to slowly, okay, let me just do group policies. Let me just do Office app management. Let me just do my applications. Let me just, whatever the easy path is for your environment, take that one and knock it off with group policy, or with co-management. Move it over, slide the slider, and then start building that dependency on Intune and moving that dependency away from your on-prem legacy functionality. And so that's an approach that I'm taking. I think a lot of folks are doing similar, but it's a strategic. It's almost an academic exercise, right? Like, you really have to sit down and think about, like, you have to plan it out.
Map it all out. Yeah.
Here's the short term. This is going to get me through the next 6 months to a year. And here's the long-term ultimate goal. My long-term ultimate goal is, I don't want a single machine managed by ConfigMgr in a year or two from now. I want everything fully managed in Intune. And I want AzureAD only. And I want to be, even though if our business is still running on-prem legacy things, I want to help move as many things off of on-prem dependencies as possible. Is it achievable? It's an organizational effort.
Got it.
But it's a target that we're shooting for, and we're going to do everything we can to get us there as close as we can. But knowing that we've got kind of the safety net of the better together story too. Like, I still can depend on ConfigMgr as long as I need to achieve our ultimate, goal of just delivering a good product to our users.
Right. Yeah, no, spot on. And the thing I answer that is, when I'm talking with customers, they will oftenly say, "Hey, like you just said, hey, I want to go to the cloud." Great. Just remember, as you go through that transformation to the cloud, right? There may be where customers will say, "Hey, well, there's the same feature here that is over here." Yeah, I understand that, and there is, right? I can deploy apps from this solution. I can deploy apps from this solution, but they do those two things very differently. So once you draw that box and you say, "I can do it this way." Great. I want you to do it that way. That's the modern way. That's the way you probably want to do it anyway, because it's much more efficient. But the other pieces that I tell customers don't put the blinders on to is your requirements. That's great that you can do it this new way, and you think that's great. Your team may think that's great. What does security think? What does compliance think? What does identity think, right? It has to be a innovative process in the workflow that's happening, that's triggered off by whatever you're trying to do, right? So when you think about transforming those group policies to cloud policies, or CIs with automatic remediations or proactive remediations, think outside your own box to say, hey, who else may or may not be dependent on that, right? And very good example of that would be hardware software inventory that's gathered by Configuration Manager, right? I can't tell you how many times when just I was a customer, I had like 4 or 5 different departments I didn't even know was tapped into my config, man, looking at the data and then making decisions off of that data, right? So thinking of asset inventory systems or other automation workflows. God forbid, back then we were using Orchestrator. So when you start thinking about all those
still using Orchestrator, man.
There you go. See, like, that's what I mean. Like, some of those things that you don't know. It's just, to be honest, like when I was an IT admin, I would have never saw what I just told you, right? I didn't take it until I evolved into IT director or manager to fully understand our system and outside of my own bubble. So when you actually go through those processes and things, I like to tell, especially large customers, that process, that journey that you're going through, make sure that journey also includes your thought process, right? Not everything is going to be innovated because you're going to have dependencies on other things, but make sure that you at least walk those things through to make sure you don't have a blind spot somewhere, because that's typically where customers get themselves in trouble. Oh, we're going to be cloud only in next year. Great. But what about these other things? Oh, man. So they get all the way to the 60-yard line, or I'm using the football reference, or that's a bad reference, the 20-yard line, right? And then say, oh, man, I can't make it to the 20 because I'm blocked. And now it's a fire for them, fire for Microsoft, and now we're trying to do square peg round hole. So It is really nice. Even Microsoft IT uses it kind of as a break glass solution. We use Intune pretty much exclusively, but it's nice to have the config agent there when we need it. And what's the old saying? Rather need it and not have it than have it and not need it, right? It's there. It's not hurting anybody. Just sitting there doing this thing. And then when you need it, it's there for you. And when you need it, typically when I talk to customers, it's like it's an innovation somewhere that needs to be done, either on their thought process, their workflow, or on the Microsoft side. But somewhere there's an innovation in that modern journey.
So what are the conversations you're having with the broader audience at a particular company? So like an example, I recently had an opportunity to share our vision of our migration with our app development team. So we've got a huge initiative for business transformation and trying to modernize business processes and building things into Azure and building all the containers and Kubernetes and things and all of that Azure stack stuff that is beyond me. There's so much cloud value. It's ridiculous. So many cool things, and that you can't specialize in all of this. And so sorry, that's just not an area. But we were able to share our vision and talk about things like identity and talk about like, hey guys, look, we're really planning on trying to have zero trust on our devices and be AzureAD only. And so when you're architecting your solutions, you need to include that in what you're building out, because the way that our device isn't going to authenticate our user. So anyway, you're talking about the moving to identity-based auth and moving more that way and making sure that we're not building dependencies on legacy auth or even anything about the device and saying, look, it's going to be zero trust, and just making sure that they're on the same page as us as we all move down this path, because like we're going to at some point be asking, hey, can you set up Azure App proxies for websites and things? So like, what are those types of conversations and like what are those roadblocks that maybe people are missing as they're attempting to make this the leap, and they're just focusing on the endpoints only and then the small bubble around workstation management, and then missing the bigger picture of like, well, how do I do these other things?
Right. So I'm glad you asked that question, and I'm going to share at least one slide from my PowerPoint deck.
We'll allow it.
One of the hopefully you can see the PowerPoint deck. But like
Yep.
Microsoft recommendations, like the second bullet is the one that stands out, and it stands out from the perspective of when you make this decision, right? You've made other decisions you don't know about, and they tend to hit you in surprise. So when I talk to customers about specifically just thinking about autopilot, right? It's like, hey, I want to start using provisioning. And I love that. I really do love when that customers have that aspiration. They want to use that technology. It, again, makes me super excited. And then I try to, Danny, customer, IoT director, kicks in and starts thinking, okay, what are the things, Danny, you would be thinking about, right? And I'm thinking like, if I want to authenticate from the cloud, what is that? If I want to provision devices with AzureAD only, what does that mean? That means the unknown, the big elephant that nobody thinks about until later is those applications, right? Those applications that, and I used to live a developer life, and I'm just like, I probably did this myself, right? I hard coded stuff to domain controllers and, the apps that have that legacy auth, right? That auth from NTLM, Kerberos auth, that's just not going to work. So it's kind of an exercise that I go with customers is, hey, let's build you a device that's AzureAD only. And then now we're going to have this like scorecard and figure out what doesn't work, what works. And then that builds basically a starting point, right? The one thing I like to make sure people take from the show today, I guess just from me talking, is find a starting point. And everybody's starting point may be different, right? But once you find a starting point, now you know whether to go left, right, forwards, backwards. If finding a starting point doesn't necessarily need to be get on a 2-hour call with Microsoft. Somebody can find a starting point and then pull us in to say, hey, this is where we want to start. And now we can start giving you some guidance. And I love when I see that from customers, because it lets me know that they are bought in. They're ready to do something. They're motivated, and now we can start having the real conversations that they need. Because having it out of order is not a problem, but once we work with you, or whoever you're choosing to work with, make sure that they put the things in the right order. Just as if you was on a whiteboard, right? If you were whiteboarding a process at work where you were doing an upgrade, right? What's your checklist? That's literally what you're doing through that exercise. And when we talk about that identity piece is critical. Zero trust is critical. I mean, if I share this, like the first conversation I have with customers, that's the first thing I'm asking about, right? Because everything that Microsoft has from its cloud stack is built on identity. That needs to be good, it needs to be solid. People need to build secure to build on top of it, because we don't want miscommunication or things because people are on the wrong page to happen in their environment. Now it's affecting everybody and everything. So I typically will ask about the identity aspect quite a bit. But cloud only is the recommended path. And it's pretty solid once you realize and get out of your own way, I guess, in a sense is what I'm trying to share.
Excellent. And this really lines up. I mentioned our video with Johannes the other day. We kind of went down this path a little bit as well, just the AzureAD only, and the concept of just dog food this, man. Like this is the only way you're going to get there, or it's going to be the most effective way to get
Absolutely.
there. Just make it your daily driver and say, hey, I'm going to run AzureAD only, and I'm going to have I'll spin up a VM that's the domain join to use as my backup, and then jump server kind of set up, and then going to do as much as I can from AzureAD only, and kind of go down that path. But at some point you've got to, now I've got to bring in, let me get my app devs in. Okay, now you need to run this, and how get stakeholders in the process. You got to illustrate that, hey, it's going to be work. It's going to be a hassle because there's things that aren't going to work. But the best way to solve things is to make them your problem. And if I can't do my work, I'm going to put some effort behind to try to fix it, right?
Dude,
like,
couldn't have said that better, right? And I really couldn't have said that better, right? Do it. Like, go build your device. Try to do the work, and then that will build the things that you need to build. And I think if it were me, I would say I would probably have somebody on it, right? I would try to have somebody on my team like, hey, I need you to go build an AzureAD device and then come tell me what we need to do to get from point A to point B. Because what the expectations that I'm setting is saying, hey, I need you to tell me if I need a AzureAD proxy, if I need the Microsoft tunnel, if I need to do pull Microsoft people in or partners. I need somebody to give me the information so that I can make a decision. It's almost like analytics, right? It's like, hey, go do this, and then tell me the signals that I need to go then take and champion somewhere else. And there's a lot that we can do. But like that, I think for customers is finding that starting point is critical. And I've done it so many times with customers. It took me actually a while to figure out, because when I came into engineering 3 years ago, I was like throwing up different signals and trying to get customers to follow. And I just found that less is more. Build a device. Hey, build a device. There you go, right? Build a device.
But more is more also, just saying.
Less is more.
Yeah.
Less is more, man.
Yeah. So when they build that AzureAD device, like if I like describe like a several week call, the first week is, hey, build the AzureAD device. What am I expecting them to say the next week? I already know. I need them to unlock that box, right? Me forcing Pandora's box or trying to help them to unlock their thinking is not going to help. But when they can actually see it and be like, hey, I can't log into my apps that are on-prem. What do I need for that? Microsoft Tunnel, AzureAD Proxy. Which one will work? Go try. You let me know which one works for your organization. Not which one you like better, not which one made you go faster. Tell me which one works better, because what we're trying to do is get them to work with their broader audience and their broader team, right? We don't want that one person in a bubble working by itself. He needs to ask the right questions. And when that light bulb lights up for the customers, that's literally the joy of what I do. Especially when they unlock it themselves, right? It's not me forcing them. It's me giving them the breadcrumbs to unlock that box. And then it really becomes almost a nothing for me, because now I feel not needed anymore. On to the next customer.
There was a comment, I think, on our channel the other day when we were talking about on-prem resources, and And it was an honest question because it was like, and then it was based on his response, there was a light bulb moment. So sorry, I'm not calling you out. I thought it was a great educational. If it was you who commented and you're watching, but he essentially said, "Hey, so how do I get my internet only devices to access my on-prem resources from the internet?" And I was like, "Well, yeah. So that's where you got to do the Azure App Proxy or VPN. Like it's not magic. Like you have to think about that disconnect, right? Like." Right. If your resource on-prem is not exposed to this device that has zero trust in your environment, it is not connected to your environment. It's just somebody sitting on the internet with an identity that can get to resources. So you think of it that way. Okay, so there's no way that works. So I've got to have a way in. So you've got to either expose it or you got to let me in. That's it. Like there's
one or the other.
But it's one of those things where you like, okay, we started with the first step of, hey, did you know you can do this? Oh, I didn't even know that. Okay. Oh, now the wheels are turning. Oh, now the next thing. And just like you said, it like takes you down that path. And I think that's a great approach because so Ben's not here to defend himself. Ben stirred up the hornet's nest on Twitter this week, and I thought it was hilarious. He essentially said, like, Intune is the best. It's better than ConfigMgr, and it's all you need. Fight me. Was it kind of?
Man, those people
air gap networks.
Right, yeah. And so, but the important thing about that was he did it on purpose. He was just trolling everybody, but it highlighted some great. The responses we got were really great because they highlight the areas that people are concerned about with this. So let's go down that path a moment of the. So there's always going to be the outlier of why I can't, and I think we often find ourselves saying, because I'm guilty of this as well. Like, okay, so I've got 90% of my devices are single user devices, and I've got 10% that are multi-user. They're used in control rooms and labs and things, and so I got to have multiple, users, and so that doesn't play nice with Intune because the multi-user scenario just isn't quite where it needs to be. Do I hold up my cloud migration because of the 10% of my devices that can't use the technology, or do I proceed because of the 90% that can absolutely benefit from it today? And so I think a lot of the responses that I saw as reading through that are similarly formulated thoughts on this, where it's, well, I have some portion of my devices are, they have no internet access. Well, okay, surely not all of your devices have no internet access.
Right.
So how about you attack the ones that can, and you build a strategy that gets those devices there? How much effort can you put into doing that? But then it kind of goes back to the question of, yeah, but if I don't want, now that puts me managing everything with two systems. Like I've got to manage it in two places now. And I get that one because that one's awful because by doing this, by spanning both, doing the bridge. Let's come back to the bridge, right?
It's a destination, Adam.
Better together
it's a
story.
Destination.
But so if we're looking at the better together story, the moment I start spinning up Intune, I've got some incentive to quickly get to Intune because the longer I stay in both environments, the longer I've got to double manage things. And so moving the slider of group policy means I don't ever have, I can decommission on-prem group policies and I can be done there. And I have one less thing I have to manage in two places. But I think there's a story there of the strategy of the long-term goal is to get everyone into Intune.
Yeah.
But if I think that I'm never going to be able to get rid of ConfigMgr because I'm always going to have some number of devices that need to be managed on-prem, what do you do with that? How do you sell that as a no, that's fine. You're going to still have to have ConfigMgr and Intune. You're going to always have to have both because you have these. Because then I'm just going to stay on-prem. What's the cloud value? Why should I now manage in two places? So what kind of conversations are you having around that?
I mean, you bring up a good point. I also look at different structure. So, when I was in Louisiana, heading up my hospital, I had a desktop team and a server team. So guess what? Your analogy in that sense kind of works, where I can, hey, desktop team, y'all deal with Endpoint Manager in the cloud. Server team, y'all still get to use ConfigMgr, right? So I can get this separation. And the one thing I found that was really interesting, especially when I came into Microsoft as a ConfigMgr PFE, was a lot of organizations that had that. And I was like, okay, so it's kind of validation that, hey, I did something right. But there was a lot of organizations that had this 2 different servers, like one servers for my one ConfigMgr environment for my servers, one for my workstations. And if they didn't have that, they had one SCCM, but then they had a collection with all their workstations and another collection with all their servers. And like, you don't touch my stuff, I won't touch your stuff. And like, yeah, so
that's my world. That's it.
Right.
There you go, right?
But then there's a lot of guys who are people. I keep saying, sorry, I'm trying to be inclusive. A lot of folks have one guy, one person who does all of it.
Yep.
So you don't have a segregation. Because now I get to manage all of it in 2 places still because it's just me doing it.
How hard could it be? Right.
So think about, like, again, what I said earlier is simplifying your ConfigMgr estate with the cloud, right? So one of the example, right, and I'm not naming customers, but I remember meeting with some customers, and some customers would say, ConfigMgr is just so much of a beast, and I want to get away from it and go straight to the cloud. I hear that all the time, right? It's a broken record. But the one thing I tell customers, like those customers probably have a large ConfigMgr environment, and there's probably a bunch of people. And guess what? There's a whole bunch of stuff going on, right? All those messages get sent back. Those DDRs and all those things can get backed up, and now somebody's got to go put out their fire. So when I look at the pain that they say they want to get off of it in their voice, I'm like, hey, how about you simplify, right? What if you could move your workstations to the cloud and now simplify your ConfigMgr environment and simplify it drastically, right? Because you most likely have more workstations than you have servers. So now that CAS, that 4 primaries that you got to manage your environment turns into 1 server, right? And now I recoup a whole bunch of real estate. So yes, I still got 2 systems, but now one system is much more efficient, much more efficient than the other, and the other one has just shrunk in size to allow it to be just as efficient as the other piece. And with it being cloud attached, I'm getting the extra value from on-prem and off-prem. So now your story becomes efficient. But yes, you're right. You do still have to manage from those 2 systems. But when it's small, it's okay to do that. But when you've got a CAS and 4 primaries, and all these devices, and now you cloud attached, that is, I couldn't imagine dealing with that even myself, right? I think the largest environment I had was 200,000 seats. And if I just think of all my workstations, I would probably have two primaries. And probably not even that. I'd have 1 primary with all the different devices, because I had over 175,000 just workstations. So now if I could take that and put it in the cloud, now I'm down to a single primary, much more efficient, effective, easier to back up, maintain. So all of that pain that I say I want to, it's such a beast, I can't keep up with updates, y'all are going too fast, when we were in the past going too slow, I can't keep up with updates, I'm engineering this, my operations all of that shrinks drastically, because you're using the cloud to make that ConfigMgr much more efficient and smaller. So you're simplifying it. Now, I want to be very realistic and say none of that is done overnight. It does take, 1, to have the thought, and then 2, again, to get that whiteboard and draw out what that process needs to be, right? You don't just go into work one day and start shut that server down, shut down. That's not how that works, right? There's some thought, there's some planning into that. But if you keep that goal of, hey, I want to get into the cloud, now managing in 2 systems is less of that daunting thing that you're describing, and now it's, okay, I'm cloud attached, so I'm much more simpler, and I don't have to deal with backlog of folders, deal with hardware inventory, software inventory, collection evaluation, all those things that when people say, I want to get rid of it, I really know that pain, and I hope it's coming across. I know it, I've lived it, The best thing I can tell those customers that have those two different systems, simplify. Get some type of parity with cloud attached. Use it to simplify, then that life will be a lot easier.
Well, and I love this because so in my environment, if we move all of our devices out of ConfigMgr, we're down to 1,500 or so servers, maybe 1,800 servers. Okay, so then as part of our organizational migration to the cloud, transformation, I like that one better. You've got to expect that along with your ConfigMgr infrastructure that can be shrunken down. Imagine how many servers eventually are getting moved to the cloud as part of this. So you're either turning them into the software as a service or infrastructure as a service or just VMs in the cloud. You're reducing your on-prem footprint, and so you can move those things into Azure as well. And then okay, so then let's talk about, because you're over tenant attached now. Okay, so one of the cool things about tenant attached that we had Matt Shadbolton who talked about the endpoint security stuff. So one of the demos we did there was, hey, so watch this, and so with tenant attached, you should have the conversation with your server guys before you do tenant attached, because it's freaky because all of a sudden your servers show up in Intune and you're like, oh wait, what did I just do? I can't actually manage my server from Intune. And that it adds them, but it's adding ConfigMgr functionality into Intune, into the Intune MIM console. You're not getting to wipe that device from Intune and manage it. But one of the cool features was the collection sync and the ability to deploy endpoint security or Defender. Was it Defender EDRs and things? Endpoint security things you can deploy as policies, and it creates them as CIs in ConfigMgr from tenant attach, and that stuff's beautiful. Okay, so now I've been able to offload yet another ConfigMgr. So essentially, tenant attach lets us do server co-management, sort of. We get to move a workload, sort of, for server management. So you can start painting that picture. Well, then there's I don't know the name of the service. Somebody will know it. So did you know that in Azure you can patch your servers from the cloud?
Yeah.
What's it called?
There's one called Update Management, but I think at Ignite they announced another one too. Jake, I just think you should
utilize Azure automation to do it.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so
I'm Update Management.
I mentioned to our server guy the other day, I said, hey, did you know that I sent him an article, and he said, oh, because we were talking about, hey, we're moving to Intune. Well, how do I move my servers? I still got to manage. I said, but there's this thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we can patch our servers from the cloud. That's the big thing that he has to do. And so you get less and less and less dependence on this. And you've got to expect that Microsoft sees this as an opportunity, I'm sure. Hopefully they're working on something to help us close that gap of less and less things. You may still end up having on-prem and no internet connected devices and things. Well, there's still technology that you can still use ConfigMgr. You can still use MDT even or whatever. But you get to change like you said, you get to just reduce the amount of overhead required to manage the system that you're using to manage the systems.
Yeah. What I do to customers, I literally just did to you, and you connected the dots. So notice I didn't actually say anything about moving the servers to the cloud, but you went there, and that's exactly what customers should think about, right? It's like, again, those workstations coming out of ConfigMan and going into the cloud, that's how you start to simplify. But you nailed it, right? Hey, I got servers. How do I manage those servers? Well, if you really think about what are you doing with SCCM with those servers, you're not deploying apps to them. You're probably doing desired state configurations, or you're doing patching. That's probably all you're doing.
Them secure and compliant. That's it.
Mm-hmm. So now you literally did exactly what I do with the customers, right? You walked yourself all the way to the cloud management piece. So now I'm not telling everybody to go out and install ConfigMan, but you just walked right down that path where we took your devices, your workstations, put them in Intune, and you asked the right question. I got all these servers. What do I do with these servers? What are you doing with those servers? Patching them, running the desired state configuration, maybe some PowerShell. That's about it. I'm configuring them. Guess what? Azure Automation. Now you and your organization can have a conversation to say what's valuable to us. But
Yep.
You were at that
and again,
20-yard line, and you made it.
absolutely. So now that's exactly how it should work, and that's how it should unfold. And again, it's not an overnight process. I want to make sure everybody understands. I get excited because I can see the finish line before customers can see it because I've lived it. I can see it. I can walk the road, but customers have to see it and walk the road. When they light up like you just did with you connected the dots. I mean, I've done my job. I'm done. Like that was awesome. Like,
and
that
I'm
is when I
already
wake
sitting
up
here
to
like,
you.
so you got log analytics and you got actions there that you can take. So you can collect your because Jake, you did this one, right? How did you log?
I did it with the Microsoft monitoring agent, but
So yeah, essentially you can pick up signals
Desired
from the
logs,
servers into Azure, into log analytics, and then you can trigger actions, automation, and say, oh hey, I found this thing. So just like I'm remediating and saying, oh, I got to make sure the service is always running, I can convert a configuration item into some sort of automation within Azure. So it's a process. It's layers. You got to peel it back and say, okay, what's the next thing I can tackle? What's the next?
And that will work on your on-prem servers as well. It's not just ones that you created up in Azure. I want to make that a clear point as well.
Yeah. So I think, and we should probably wrap up with some. But I mean, the thing that we're excited about here, the thing that I guess the takeaway for the audience really is, if you're like most of us and you're in this on-prem world, there is so much cloud value already that you can tap into. You can get there, and you can go as slow or as fast as you want. It's not like Danny said offline in the beginning. You don't have to go greenfield. That's kind of the bumpy road. There's a transitionary phase to get you to utilizing as much of the cloud as possible. Now, we didn't go down that path of, okay, so you've got a bunch of these already existing hybrid devices. Well, to get those to AzureAD only, you're going to have to reimage them. You don't have to reimage them all today, but you can turn that into your life cycle. We replace a quarter of our machines every year. Not hard to
small
say,
batches at a time.
We got a 4-year roadmap to get AzureAD only. Okay, cool, that works. If we want to accelerate that, we know that all we got to do is go wipe the machine and let it rebuild, and cool, autopilot in it. But because I think even that is like it's like, oh, I gotta reimage all my boxes. No, you don't. I mean, there's a process. You image machines today, don't you? They just build it in your process. Exactly. Just change what you do. Oh, I got to migrate. I've got 2,000 apps to migrate. I'm going to migrate.
Do it tomorrow.
It's like we eat elephant one bite at a time, right? Like it's just, as we build new apps, we're going to put them into Intune. And everything, just look at it critically, look at it on, like you said, putting ConfigMgr in that box, and then figuring out how can I do it otherwise. And the best part, and I'll let you sell this one, Kat, talk about like, so if you've reached the end of this video and you're like, me, I want to do this. Danny, how can they get help? How can they get here? How can they go down this path?
Yeah, so work with your Microsoft account teams. If you have a Microsoft account team, ask your Microsoft account team about trying to get some CAD assistance. Typically, they will try to work it on their own before they escalate the CAT. There's a lot of great people in our field. Actually, to be honest, like the CAT team helps train our field. So just reach out to your account team. That's the best thing you can do. Reach out to your account team, let them know what you're trying to do, the things you want to do, and then they will make the recommendations from there. And our TSPs, SSPs, other whatever acronyms you want to name, they all have a value to you and your organization, and they're responsible for being that trusted advisor, their partner working with you. I used to be one of them. So, get with the right people on your account team and let them help guide you on your process and your journey. They will definitely pull in all the people that is needed. We get pulled in, or let's say CAT team gets pulled in, quite often with other account teams, that's how we get engaged. We get engaged from your account team. That's why I'm telling you to get with your account team. Your cat team will reach out for assistance on the help or with you as a customer, and then they'll pull us in as needed. And then the cat team will then come get people like me in my new role and feature PMs if needed to help understand roadmap, direction, other things like that. But I think I will share, I guess, my last statement, it would be, don't feel like you're going at it alone. I know I did a lot when I was a customer. And, if I could talk to myself, my younger version of myself is, don't feel afraid to ask for help, or get a different opinion. Having more opinions is not a bad thing. You in the end still have to make the decision. And that's what I wish I could tell my younger self. I probably would have evolved a little faster, matured a little faster, but I see all too many times people don't want to ask for help because they feel like their ego or whatever. I know I'm here to help anybody, and I'm sure there's lots of other people like you two guys on the call and many other people out there, our MVPs. We all do things to share information. So ask for help and get the opinions, get the thoughts, and you make the decision on what's best for you and your organization.
Excellent. Well, I think that's a perfect note to end on. This has been a wonderful discussion. I hope that the audience makes it through this. I hope you folks get inspired. As we mentioned, we will include all the relevant links in the description, including how to get a hold of Danny on his various platforms, including Twitter and YouTube. Danny, thank you so very much for hanging out with us, and I mean, we could just keep going on this, and this is very good. So definitely looking forward to more to come on your tech community series that you've got going, and on your YouTube channel. So hey, if you don't forget to go out there and subscribe on his channel, show him your support, and hopefully we can get you guys back on. Maybe you can bring your partner in crime next time, and just we can have a round table or something and we'll bring ours, you bring yours, right? Let's have a go head to head on this stuff. Anyway, thanks, Danny. We really appreciate you being here, and thanks, Jake, as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. This was great.
All right. See you next time, guys.